Did you know in old Hollywood, producers and directors experimented with films that went so wrong that they almost destroyed Hollywood? Those films had such gross material that they were banned just to save not only Hollywood, but also the general public. Some of them were so bad that if they were allowed, it would have changed history at all. The Human Centipede 2, 2011. Directed by Tom Six, this film is a sequel to the already controversial original. It was conceived as a meta approach, focusing on a fan of the original film who seeks to recreate the disturbing experiment seen in the first installment. Many critics and viewers deemed the sequel even more unsettling than its predecessor. The movie's unsettling imagery and the intensity of its scenes prompted immediate backlash. It was officially banned in several countries, with the British Board of Film Classification initially refusing classification. This refusal effectively prevented any legal distribution. A modified version with numerous cuts was eventually approved in the UK, but the censorship process was extensive. The controversy brought attention to the tension between extreme horror as a genre and public decency standards. Supporters argued that filmmakers should have broad freedom of expression within the horror space, while detractors felt that the film's content existed solely for shock value. The debate highlighted the complexities of categorizing and rating cinematic content, raising questions about how far the horror genre can push boundaries before crossing into territory deemed unacceptable for public release. Hate Crime, 2013. Directed by James Cullen Bressak, this film depicts a harrowing home invasion perpetrated by individuals motivated by extreme prejudice. It aimed to showcase the dangers of hateful ideologies and the destructive impact these ideologies can have on innocent people. Upon its review, the BBFC refused to classify the film. Official statements pointed to the film's extremely distressing content and the aggressive language used. This effectively banned it from legal distribution in the UK. Some critics felt the movie presented a cautionary tale about extremism, but others believed it sensationalized highly sensitive material. Hate Crime's ban illustrates the delicate balance between raising awareness of real-world issues and unintentionally glorifying or exploiting sensitive subjects. The film's predicament highlighted how official censorship boards can view a work as potentially damaging if it is seen as lacking clear mitigating context, or if it doesn't convey its themes with a sense of responsibility. The controversy served as a reminder that addressing topics like bigotry requires a nuanced approach to avoid sparking unintended responses. I Spit on Your Grave, 1978. This 1970s-era film, directed by Mir Zarchi, follows the story of a woman who endures shocking victimization and subsequently seeks retribution. It was created at a time when cinematic depictions of vengeance were becoming increasingly graphic, aiming to portray the consequences of severe trauma. Numerous countries, including Ireland and Norway, implemented outright bans, citing troubling scenes and intense themes. In the UK, it was labeled a so-called video nasty, a term used to describe films with especially disturbing home video content. Bans remained in effect until heavily edited versions emerged years later. This title became emblematic of the 1970s exploitation era and sparked debates over whether certain subjects could ever be portrayed ethically. Proponents argued that the movie underscored the destructive impact of violence, while critics felt it was excessively exploitative. Its contentious reception underscored how censorship boards often prioritize protecting viewers from highly distressing depictions, even when the film aims to deliver a moral or cautionary message about cruelty. The Evil Dead, 1981. A cult classic, directed by Sam Raimi. The Evil Dead follows a group of friends in a remote cabin who inadvertently unleash otherworldly forces. Noted for its innovative camera work and over-the-top supernatural sequences, it has influenced many modern horror filmmakers. In several countries, including the UK, The Evil Dead faced significant censorship, largely due to its graphic portrayal of demonic encounters and intense imagery. Labeled a video nasty, It was subject to heavy edits before securing release in certain regions. Despite its troubled initial reception, The Evil Dead has become a cornerstone of the horror genre. Its banning, and subsequent cult status revival, demonstrates how public sentiment can evolve. Over time, many regions relaxed their stances, eventually granting the film uncut releases. This shift highlights the changing definitions of acceptable horror content, as well as the power of fan-driven support to rehabilitate a film's reputation. Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Ruggero Deodato's Cannibal Holocaust is widely regarded as one of the most polarizing movies ever made. Marketed as a documentary-style exploration of a missing film crew on the Amazon, its use of realistic found footage techniques blurred the line between fiction and reality. Due to extreme graphic depictions and claims of actual harm to living creatures, the film was banned in over 50 countries. Authorities across the globe expressed alarm over its lifelike depiction of violence, forcing the director to provide proof that no actors were physically harmed. In some places, the movie was heavily edited. In others, it was not permitted at all. Cannibal Holocaust ignited a lasting dialogue on the responsibilities of filmmakers depicting extreme content. It laid the groundwork for future found footage productions, demonstrating how realism could amplify viewer reactions. The controversy also prompted discussions about the ethics of depicting harm to living creatures in the name of art, leading to more stringent guidelines and monitoring in film sets around the world. Baise-Moi, 2000. Co-directed by Virginie Despentes and Coralie Trintignant, this French film follows two women who engage in a series of violent acts after experiencing significant personal traumas. It combines elements of dramatic storytelling with intense imagery, aiming for a raw, confrontational style. Its explicit portrayal of adult content and harsh behavior led to bans in nations like France and Australia. In the UK, the film was heavily edited before receiving an 18 rating. Critics disagreed on whether it was a feminist statement or an example of gratuitous exploitation. This film exemplifies how subject matter involving personal retribution and extreme behavior can blur the line between social critique and sensationalism. The banning and editing highlight the difficulties in balancing artistic authenticity with public sensibilities, a recurring issue in filmmaking. As controversial as it was, the film ignited significant discourse on freedom of expression and the portrayal of personal agency in cinema. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Directed by Stanley Kubrick and based on Anthony Burgess's novel, this dystopian narrative examines themes of free will, societal control, and moral choice through the exploits of its central character, Alex. The film's futuristic setting and iconic stylization made it a cinematic landmark. Censorship boards in Ireland and Singapore halted the film's release, citing its portrayal of delinquent acts. In the UK, Kubrick himself requested the film's withdrawal after allegations emerged linking it to instances of real-world mimicry. A Clockwork Orange only became widely accessible in the UK after Kubrick's passing, when it was re-evaluated. The film provoked intense debate about whether on-screen violence triggers real-world behavior. While some argued that art can inadvertently fuel undesirable actions, others contended that cinematic expression should not be held liable for individual choices. The ban's lifting after Kubrick's death signaled evolving views on the film's themes and on the responsibility of directors for viewers' actions. The Last House on the Left, 1972. This movie was Wes Craven's directorial debut, presenting a grim tale involving an attack on two teenage friends and the ensuing retaliation by their parents. Craven drew on themes from Ingmar Bergman's earlier work, but with a style that some found deeply unsettling. The intense nature of its content led to bans in multiple countries, with British authorities placing it on the video nasty list. In the UK, it remained prohibited until 2002, when a heavily edited version was finally approved. Despite its initial condemnation, The Last House on the Left later garnered critical re-evaluation and is often included in academic discussions on 1970s-era horror. It influenced future directors who wished to address similarly grim themes while also being mindful of censorship constraints. The film's journey from banned exploitation to cult recognition exemplifies how public and critical perceptions can shift radically over time. Faces of Death, 1978. Billed as a documentary, Faces of Death included staged and real-life footage depicting various distressing events. Directed by John Allen Schwartz, it aimed to shock audiences with raw, unfiltered depictions of mortality. Due to its graphic content, it faced prohibition in countries including Australia and New Zealand. In the UK, it was part of the video nasty wave, prompting severe censorship. Even where it wasn't banned outright, it circulated largely through underground means. Faces of Death incited debates about the boundaries between documentary filmmaking and exploitative sensationalism. Some argued that it merely capitalized on shock value, while others suggested it opened a window into topics rarely discussed openly. Ultimately, it stands as a controversial product of its era, demonstrating how shock-based marketing can lead to global regulatory crackdowns. Tenebrae, 1982. Dario Argento, a master of the Italian giallo style, directed Tenebrae, focusing on an American writer who becomes entangled in a series of mysterious attacks during a trip to Rome. The film showcased Argento's signature blend of suspense, stylish visuals, and intense sequences. Although not as harsh in tone as some other banned films, Tenebrae still faced scrutiny due to graphic portrayals of distressing situations. In the UK, it was part of the video nasty group, leading to edits and limited distribution. Germany also imposed restrictions. Tenebrae helped popularize the giallo subgenre worldwide, but its censorship illustrated the difficulties that certain niche styles can face when regulated by more conservative boards. In hindsight, the film's artistic craft has garnered praise, proving that even heavily censored or banned material can achieve critical appreciation over time. Blood Feast, 1963. Often called one of the first splatter films, Blood Feast was directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, who aimed to break new ground in depicting intense imagery on screen. Its story centers on a caterer who commits terrible acts as part of a bizarre ritual. British authorities, among others, refused certification for Blood Feast for decades, deeming it too graphic. When it finally received classification in the UK in 2005, many viewers were startled that a film from 1963 could still provoke such debate. Blood Feast's role as a pioneer of the splatter genre cannot be understated. It established a new frontier for depicting intense content in horror. The film's banning underscored how pushing creative boundaries can come at the cost of official approval. Over time, it gained a cult following, and now holds a place in cinema history as a trailblazer, albeit a highly controversial one. Anthropophagus, 1980. Directed by Joe D'Amato, Anthropophagus follows a group of travelers who encounter a dangerous individual on an isolated island. As part of the wave of 1980s Italian genre cinema, it featured a moody atmosphere and confrontational imagery. The extreme nature of certain sequences led to a ban in the UK, classifying it as yet another video nasty. Authorities criticized it for what they perceived to be gratuitous shock. It stayed off the market for many years until significant edits were made. Much like other Italian exploitation films of its era, Anthropophagus exemplifies how distinctive regional horror traditions can collide with broader moral standards. Its prohibition demonstrated the global reach of censorship efforts and how different countries frequently followed the UK's lead in regulating explicit horror releases. Once overshadowed by condemnation, it later found new life among collectors and fans of retro-exploitation cinema. Nekromantik, Tuhat 1987. Jörg Buttgereit's Nekromantik examines taboo content by following a character who brings home a disturbing souvenir. The intention was to craft an experimental art film that questioned social and moral boundaries. Because of its subject matter, Nekromantik was banned in multiple territories, including parts of Australia and Iceland. In the UK, it was outright rejected for certification, and it remains restricted in many regions to this day. Nekromantik is often cited in academic circles, discussing transgressive art and the limits of representation. It raises fundamental questions. Is a filmmaker free to explore the darkest corners of human behavior, or must there be clear societal boundaries that art should not cross? While the film has a small, dedicated following, the broader consensus underscores that pushing boundaries in such extreme ways often leads to censorship and widespread disapproval. The Bunny Game, 2010. Directed by Adam Raymeyer, The Bunny Game tells the story of a vulnerable individual who is abducted, leading to unsettling ordeals. Presented in stark black-and-white cinematography, the film aimed to create an oppressive, claustrophobic tone. Various boards and critics described its content as overwhelming. The BBFC denied classification, viewing it as lacking mitigating context. This effectively restricted it from legal circulation in the UK. The Bunny Game's reception highlighted ongoing tensions in the horror genre, balancing the desire for realism or raw expression with the need to avoid gratuitous depictions of cruelty. The ban not only underscores how protective some boards remain, but also sparks conversations about whether certain topics can ever be portrayed without crossing ethical lines. Grotesque, 2009. Koji Shiraishi's Grotesque focuses on two individuals who undergo severe ordeals after being kidnapped. Its straightforward plot places emphasis on the grim spectacle, with minimal character development. In the UK, the BBFC refused to classify Grotesque entirely, stating that it existed solely to invoke intense discomfort without redeeming artistic or narrative merit. This stance prevented the film from being shown in formal venues, and it remains restricted in numerous countries. Grotesque serves as a prime example of how certain horror films can abandon complexity in favor of extreme content. The ban illustrated that authorities often expect at least some broader narrative or moral framework to justify highly disturbing material. It also underscored how subjective the line can be between permissible horror and what censors view as purely exploitative content. Flower of Flesh and Blood, 1985. Part of the Japanese guinea pig series, Flower of Flesh and Blood employed highly realistic practical effects that alarmed viewers worldwide. It famously prompted actor Charlie Sheen to contact the authorities, believing he had witnessed an illegal recording. Although not officially banned in Japan, many retailers chose not to stock it due to the negative publicity. Outside Japan, various jurisdictions either prohibited it or pressured distributors to remove it from circulation. The film sparked renewed conversations about the distinctions between staged cinematic violence and genuine content. The uproar also highlighted how advanced special effects can blur lines, sometimes causing unsuspecting viewers to mistake fictional footage for real events. This case contributed to enhanced scrutiny of hyper-realistic portrayals in cinema, influencing how future productions were vetted. Cuties, 2020. A French production focusing on adolescent experiences in a modern society, Cuties aimed to comment on how young people navigate cultural norms. However, it stirred immediate debate when it was released on a major streaming platform, with many viewers believing it contradicted its own message. Some countries, including Turkey and certain regions in Africa, outright banned the film over concerns about the portrayal of young characters in suggestive contexts. In the United States, it sparked political debates, public protests, and even legal scrutiny in one state. Cuties represents how a film's intended message can be overshadowed by its marketing, or by controversial elements that strike a nerve with viewers. The banning underscored the need for careful handling of sensitive themes, especially those involving minors, and highlighted the speed at which public backlash can amplify on social media and political stages. Titicut Follies, 1967. Frederick Wiseman's Titicut Follies is a documentary exposing the conditions inside a state hospital for individuals with psychiatric disorders. Shot in a stark, realistic style, it offered an unfiltered look at institutional life in the 1960s. Rather than depicting explicit violence or distressing content in the typical cinematic sense, Titicut Follies was banned due to privacy concerns. Courts ruled that the film violated the rights of the individuals shown. Public screenings were prohibited for decades, and it was not until 1991 that it became more widely available. The banning of Titicut Follies underscored the complexity of balancing investigative journalism, documentary filmmaking, and personal privacy rights. It raised ethical questions about how vulnerable individuals are depicted in film. As a result, documentary filmmakers today often grapple with similar issues, taking extra precautions to ensure that they do not infringe on participants' legal protections. The House on the Edge of the Park, 1980. Directed by Ruggero Deodato, best known for another controversial title in this list, The House on the Edge of the Park tells the story of intruders who terrorize guests at a social gathering. While it aimed to critique societal decay, many felt it pushed boundaries beyond what audiences could handle. The film's extreme depictions led to bans in the UK, Australia, and various Nordic nations. In the UK, it landed on the infamous Video Nasty list and underwent censorship for years. Like Cannibal Holocaust, this film's contentious reception revealed Deodato's penchant for confronting viewers with material some deemed unwatchable. Over time, it sparked discussion about whether shocking narratives can also serve as social commentary. The House on the Edge of the Park remains a prime example of how a filmmaker's style can repeatedly collide with regulatory standards. Ken Park, 2002. Directed by Larry Clark, who also directed the controversial film Kids, Ken Park focuses on a group of teenagers in California dealing with turmoil in their personal lives. Stylistically, it remains consistent with Clark's raw, documentary-like approach. Concerns about the depiction of minors in problematic scenarios led to the film being banned in Australia and never receiving a wide theatrical release in the United States. Even film festivals refrained from screening it, fearing legal consequences. Ken Park's case is indicative of the limits placed on cinematic depictions of underage characters. Many viewers and critics argued that, regardless of the director's intended message, the movie's content was too sensitive for mainstream distribution. It set a precedent that, no matter how strong an artistic statement may be, films involving minors must be handled with the utmost care to avoid legal and ethical issues. Visions of Ecstasy, 1989. This short British film presented symbolic sequences inspired by religious imagery. Directed by Nigel Wingrove, it aimed to explore themes of spiritual yearning and mystical experiences in a highly stylized manner. In an unprecedented move, UK authorities banned Visions of Ecstasy specifically on grounds of blasphemy. The ban lasted until 2008, when the UK repealed its blasphemy laws, finally allowing the film to be shown. Visions of Ecstasy stands out for being the only film in UK history to be prohibited solely for alleged blasphemy. This unique case highlights how societal and legal views on religious depiction can shift dramatically over time. The eventual repeal of archaic laws demonstrates how censorship is intimately tied to cultural and legislative contexts. Men Behind the Sun, 1988. This Chinese production focuses on historical events from World War II, specifically the activities of a notorious military unit. Though intended as a depiction of past atrocities, the film included extremely graphic sequences that alarmed viewers worldwide. Some nations, including South Korea and certain European countries, restricted its release. Scenes portraying real incidents were considered exceedingly distressing. Even in Hong Kong, editing was mandated. Men Behind the Sun ignited debates on how to portray historical tragedies responsibly without devolving into sensationalism. Critics questioned whether explicit depictions overshadowed the film's educational aims. In the realm of censorship, it exemplified the dilemma faced by boards trying to weigh the importance of historical awareness against the risk of causing undue distress among viewers. The Brown Bunny, 2003. Vincent Gallo wrote, directed, and starred in this indie drama about a motorcyclist traveling cross-country. While primarily a character study, it gained notoriety for including a highly contentious scene with explicit implications. Although not outright banned in most countries, The Brown Bunny faced heavy criticism. Many festivals refused to screen it due to the scene in question, and critics were deeply divided. Some described it as an artistic experiment, while others saw it as unnecessary provocation. The film became a flashpoint for discussing how far independent cinema could go, especially in portraying adult relationships. The controversy also underlined how a single scene can define a film's public perception. Over time, edited versions appeared, and some critics reassessed The Brown Bunny more favorably, pointing to its introspective mood rather than focusing solely on its controversial content. Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. Already mentioned in many discussions of extreme cinema, Salo was adapted from the works of the Marquis de Sade and reset in World War II-era Italy. Directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini, it delves into power dynamics and moral transgression. Although not universally banned everywhere, it encountered prohibitions in multiple countries. In Australia, Salo was not legally available for decades, and it underwent heavy edits in the UK. Many theaters refused to screen it, even where it was allowed, due to public outcry. Salo remains a staple in debates about whether explicit, disturbing art can also carry philosophical weight. Critics who defend the film claim it indicts oppressive systems by highlighting the extremes of dominance, while detractors insist it's too disturbing for standard circulation. The persistent controversies around Salo underscore the film's continued power to provoke reflection on censorship, freedom of speech, and the moral responsibilities of filmmakers. Trouble Every Day, 2001. Directed by Claire Denis, Trouble Every Day combines horror elements with an introspective, moody tone. The plot focuses on individuals dealing with a condition that blurs the lines between desire and destructive impulses. Several countries and distributors hesitated or refused to release it due to its intense depiction of physical acts. Even in France, where it was produced, the film faced calls for censorship. While it ultimately screened in specialized venues, mainstream acceptance proved elusive. The film sparked discussion on how genre blending can lead to heightened controversy. Trouble Every Day straddles the boundary between artistic exploration and boundary-pushing content. Its difficulties with censorship reveal the complexities that arise when a film merges high-level artistry with shock elements, creating discomfort for broader audiences and regulators alike. Gutterballs, 2008. Gutterballs is a Canadian indie slasher movie set primarily in a bowling alley. Directed by Ryan Nicholson, it sought to mix a retro 1980s horror aesthetic with an extreme approach. Due to a protracted, distressing scene and overall harsh content, the UK refused classification. Various regions either declined to distribute it or placed it under severe restrictions. Though it found a minor following, it remained largely underground due to legal obstacles. The film's trajectory further demonstrates that while niche audiences may support extreme horror, official bodies often draw hard lines. Gutterballs also highlights the perpetual tension between artists who wish to push the envelope and censors concerned about audience well-being. This tension shapes the nature of horror distribution, with underground or niche markets sometimes being the only available outlet for such controversial material. Visitor Q, 2001. Takashi Miike directed Visitor Q as part of his extensive and varied filmography. The movie presents a dysfunctional family dynamic through a blend of dark humor, surreal sequences, and highly unsettling moments. Although it was released in Japan without major intervention, Many international distributors balked at the content, resulting in limited showings primarily at underground film festivals. Official classification boards in some countries refused to grant distribution licenses. Visitor Q epitomizes Meek's reputation for challenging viewers, blending humor and discomfort in equal measure. Its banning outside Japan underscores the disparities between cultural standards, as content considered permissible or overlooked in one region might be deemed unacceptable in another. The film remains a subject of debate for fans of experimental cinema, who argue that Meek's approach, while provocative, is also uniquely visionary. Hound Dog, 2007. Hound Dog follows a young character in the American South, played by Dakota Fanning, who was only 12 years old at the time of filming. Although intended as a coming-of-age drama, it garnered major controversy for one particular scene. The film was never widely banned in an official capacity, but faced such severe backlash from religious organizations and social commentators that its distribution was minimal. Many theaters chose not to book it, and the resulting public uproar overshadowed the director's intent to address difficult personal growth themes. Hound Dog underscores the significant constraints placed on filmmakers when handling stories involving minors. Even a simulated scene perceived as inappropriate can elicit public outcry, with calls for bans overshadowing any intended messages about adversity and resilience. This scenario emphasizes the heightened sensitivity around content featuring young actors, reflecting a broader protective stance in society. Tumbling Doll of Flesh, 1998. Sometimes referred to as Niku Daruma, this underground Japanese film is characterized by an almost non-existent storyline, relying instead on prolonged portrayals of extreme acts. It was made with a very specific, niche audience in mind, and almost immediately gained notoriety. While not always banned via formal legislation, Tumbling Doll of Flesh effectively found itself blacklisted by distributors worldwide. Few legitimate outlets would carry it, and many critics argued that it contributed nothing beyond shock. This film's near invisibility in mainstream channels underscores how certain projects push boundaries so far that they fail to secure support even among independent distributors. Consequently, it rarely surfaces outside underground trading. Tumbling Doll of Flesh serves as a stark reminder that while freedom of expression is generally championed in the arts, social, ethical, and market forces can act as de facto censors when a film is considered deeply objectionable. Banned films occupy a complicated space in the history of cinema. They serve as cautionary tales about what can happen when art collides with social, ethical, and legal boundaries. At times, these works provoke necessary conversations on issues that mainstream media avoids. In other instances, they attract strong condemnation for appearing to promote cruelty or for trivializing serious real-world issues.